First of all, China has to convince us that this opening, it is not just in its own interest. Because we are very used to the fact that China does things when they are simply in their own interest. And we are not sure of that. We don't see our interest. Second thing is the whole financial system, not just the capital control, has got to change. It's got to become much more transparent. And it's not just a question of capital control, but we don't see that coming. And then a reserve currency can only be issued by a country which is perceived to be a refuge country ruled by the rule of law. Is that clear? Right now, we have more Chinese running to the States, to Canada, to Australia, than we have foreigners running into China. Then we have Filipinos whose visas are taken away and kicked out of China. If that is a position, China will never be perceived as a country where to take refuge, and its currency will be rejected. I live in Boston, I live in London, I live in Italy. No one there is waiting open arms for the renminbi internationalization, apart from the people in the London Stock Exchange who think they're going to make a lot of money. But they get no solidarity in Europe about that. And there is a big split. Okay? Having said that, I want to... so, if you want to play a role, the window is there, but you have to convince that you seriously come to the last resort. You can be a refuge. There is law here. There is protection. And you're going to play by the rules fairly and not take the internationalization just to your advantage. Otherwise, just people don't go along, as they are not. And this discussion is incestuous, because we are talking among ourselves in Shanghai, but it's not a big deal anywhere outside here.
Andre?
I think RMB internationalization is still in the early stages, but it's potentially an important process that will create business opportunities for you guys, that will create opportunities for Alberto to express more cynical views.
Listen, I already made way more money than you did in China. Don't worry about that.
I don't worry about it.
I can retire. I got my opportunities done.
Exactly.
And wrapped up. And not in renminbi.
And since I've already used most of my speaking time, I'll be happy to pass on.
I don't have anything else to add around this. What I will say is I am pretty, I think first of all, I think as you pointed out, I think RMB as a reserve currency is complementary and not necessarily competitive to the U.S. dollar. And I think I just recently read something, and maybe I'm wrong, that as far as the RMB now is the third largest currency for trade finance, behind the euro and the U.S. dollar and euro respectively, I guess. So, I think that, it's exciting. Obviously, I tell my bosses that, Asia is a growth engine out here. We have an onshore stock market here in China that trades between 30 and 40 yards a day. We have one in India that trades between 15 and 20 yards a day, Korea. So these are opportunities that really could see the currency markets really evolve, I think, quite strongly in Asia over time, of course.
Thanks, Chris. Thomas?
I think if I recall a book that's written by an Italian many years ago, Machiavelli, and it's called The Prince. And the Prince said that, in the book it says there's no such thing as looking at somebody else's interest. It's all about your personal interest. And in the world of geopolitics, there's only common interest. And when common interest doesn't align, then it's all about self-interest. So there's nothing wrong with China looking after its self-interest. Just like US looked after its self-interest by raising a lot of bonds to save its economy at the expense of the rest of the world. But I think it's important to then step back and say, if you want to be a reserve currency, it's both, as Andre said, a privilege and a responsibility. And the privilege is being able to support the international trading system and the global financial system. But at the same time, there's a financial responsibility, which is if your capital markets are not mature enough, and you open it up and you try to make yourself an international currency and a reserve currency, ultimately you end up creating more turmoil in the system and more harm to your economy than anything else in the world. And I think it's from that point of view, I think we need to step back and say, yes, things may not move as fast as we would like, but we would like to also look at it positively and say, look, China looks after its interests, but it also looks after it also values its position as a responsible member of the international community. So as and when I'm ready, and I think that I can support the world in its capital market development, then I'll open up, the rest of my currency to free trade. So that's my point of view. Thank you very much.
Good, thanks, Thomas.
I think we have a coffee break until 11, but before we leave for the coffee break, please join me in thanking the panel.